Thanks, Laura. Hi, I'm Louis Jerome, grateful member of Al-Anon. My home group is Courage to Change. We meet on Sunday nights here on Camino Island. And, you know, my group, we use the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is kind of something that most Al-Anon groups don't do, but we do it, and I am so happy that we do it that way. I learned a lot of things about myself when my sponsor took me through the steps. My life before coming into Al-Anon, I've been here, 12 years, a little over 12 years now, and my life was pretty messy. There was things going on at home, that I didn't know how to control. My wife's an alcoholic, and I did not know how to deal with that kind of stuff. Here's the funny thing. I drank really, really hard myself for many years. My wife and I, we met in a bar. I was blackout drunk on the day I met her. My buddy tells me the next day, he's like, man, Vicky really liked you. She was really into you. And I'm like, who? But that's how I was for a lot of my adult life. In high school, and I was a wallflower at the school dances. I had a hard time talking to people, couldn't relate to people, felt totally lost in my skin. Just didn't know how to deal with life a lot. I hear you guys say a lot, from the alcoholic side, I was born, but they never gave me the manual. And, that's how I felt too. I just couldn't relate to people. And I used alcohol myself so I could have a good time, so I can loosen up and talk to people. And that's what I did for many, many years myself. My wife unfortunately has a few DUIs. I have a lot more wrecked cars, okay? I'll just tell you that. I have my fair share of that stuff. But one thing about going through the steps, through the Big Book, I found out that I wasn't an alcoholic. I was a hard drinker, heavy drinker for many years. But when I decided to back off and stop drinking, well, not really stop, but I was able to back off and lay off for a few years. My wife wasn't able to do that, and I did not know why. I had no idea. And so therefore, I became very hypocritical. I was mean. I was not a very nice person. I've had, there's been parts of my life in the past where I was that same way too, but here's the thing. There's a lot of embarrassing things that happen sometimes, when you're married to an alcoholic, and now I'm able to not hold those things against my wife. I understand she suffered from a disease that she could not control, and I just did not know how to deal with it. I was angry, I was pissed off, I was resentful. Something about from my early life. I was raised in a household that was affected by alcoholism, the family disease of alcoholism. As kids, we spent a lot of time at my grandparents' house, and my grandfather was a drunk, and we didn't know it at the time, but that explained a lot of things about how my grandmother, why she was acting the way she was acting, and the anger and stuff that she had going on. And then my mother and her sister held a lot of resentment against each other and my mother even said one time to us, she says, "You kids, you just got to know something about us. Us Jeroens, we hold grudges." And she's like, and we remember stuff of people that did to us. And that's how I grew up. I grew up in a very judgmental and critical household. And, that's nothing against my mom either. That's what she knew. And, she transferred that over to us. And unfortunately, I had the opportunity to do the same thing to my kids. And, I'm not very proud about that. There's a lot of things that happened in our house that, my kids had to see. I was screaming at my wife, pounding on the wall, throwing a fit, just being pissed off all the time. And it seemed like every chance I had, I used that, my wife's offenses, I used them against her a lot. And, I'm not very proud of that today, but I didn't know any better. I didn't know. So I do know though that a lot of the things a lot of the things that were happening in our house were the things that I brought into our marriage. I I brought a lot of this stuff. Like I said, I mean, I grew up in a house that was pretty dysfunctional for a long time. So I do know that I was the maker of my own troubles for sure. And so. For many years, I'm going to talk about my wife a little bit, and I haven't had an opportunity. My wife is recently sober; she's got a little bit over a year's sobriety now, and I haven't really talked in front of her and I'm going to really try hard not to say anything that's going to, hurt her feelings. Her story's her story. My story is mine, okay? And I just want to make sure that I stay on my side of the street here. She did some things that, like I said, there's some embarrassing things. There's some things that cause loss of money and things like that, loss of income and whatnot. And like I said, I use that as a baseball bat against her sometimes. I brought that up as much as I could to her. And I remember one day that it was one Saturday afternoon, it was just like a lot of other ones where, I was ticked off, pissed off about something, and I got in her face about it and screaming and yelling. And, the thing about when we act like that, or when I act like that, the person who's getting the brunt of my verbal assault, eventually, you see their eyes glaze over and they're not paying attention to you, the volume's turned down, and that pissed me off even more. And I didn't like that. But anyways, this one particular afternoon, I'm like, don't you see what you're doing in this family? We're falling apart and it's your fault. And, my son, he's down sitting there listening to this and he's like, no, Dad, it's you. You're the problem here. And that pissed me off even more, I know I can laugh about it now, but at the time I remember it was not a laughable thing going on. My daughter's crying, my son's flipping me off, storming out of the house. I'm slamming the door behind him, and it's just another awesome Saturday afternoon at the Drone House. And it was no wonder my kid, and it took a long time for my kids to learn to. I hope anyways, to learn to trust their dad again, and he's not the raging crazy man he used to be. But it took me many years in the program, working these steps, sitting on my sponsor's couch, going to meetings, being of service. It took a lot of that to get rid of all that selfish, immature behavior that was a part of my life. This was probably a year or so before I went into the program, but I remember one afternoon, it was after one of these tirades, another one, wife's drunk, pissed off at me. Hassan slammed the door, heading out the door, and I see my daughter there, sitting on the stairs, going upstairs, and she's just sitting there, with this dull look in her eyes. And, I was just sitting there wondering, when is she going to be the target of my anger, because that's what happens. When my wife's eyes glazed over, I started on my son, and, for the formative years of my son's life, he didn't have a dad that cared about him. I mean, I cared about him, but I wasn't there for him. Every time I asked him to do something, yard work, chores, whatever, it was never good enough. And like I said, I criticized, and if I came down to the point where he didn't want to do it anymore. And now I see I couldn't blame him, because who wants to be a part of that? Who wants to do stuff and then listen to their dad just chew him up one side and down the other? I mean, he came so bad that, on the weekends he was never around. He was gone. I didn't understand at the time, but I know perfectly why now. He didn't want to be anywhere around me. Our house was not a nice place to be. And it seemed like the friends that we hung around with at that time, they were just like us. They drank just like we did. They partied just like we did. They fought like cats and dogs just like we did, but that's all we knew. We didn't know anything better. And, that's the way it was. Not a lot of happy times there. But, then my wife got her last DUI, and I was just at my wit's end. I didn't know what to do. just did not know what to do. What I did know though was, our son was already out of the house by then. I already made sure that he was gone. And the things that were happening were, led to him needing to be gone, but I sure didn't do it in a loving, caring way. It was like, go, airplane ticket, you're gone. And luckily we have a better relationship than that now, but back then it wasn't very good. But, yeah, like I was saying, I mean, it just wasn't a very nice place to be in our house. But anyways, my wife got her last DUI, and I know I didn't want to end the family. I mean, her daughter, she was only about 10 at the time, and I didn't want to put her through, all that stuff that goes along with getting divorced and stuff like that. So, my goal was, okay, we're just going to ride this out until she graduates, and then we'll see what happens. That's the extent of my long-range planning, and that was my best thinking. I couldn't do anything better than that, and that was the plan at the time. But I do know that I didn't want to put our daughter through that, and so I stuck around, but I didn't know what was the next step. My mother-in-law, she had years, probably about a year or so before that, she'd given me her little One Day at a Time booklet, and it's one of our daily readers, and she had used it for many years herself. And I remember this was a Sunday night, and we had just gone, and the police hauled her away, and and I was just sitting there. I lost. I had no idea what to do. And anyways, I made some phone calls and things like that, and put Mackenzie to bed, and and I just sitting there on the couch, and finally I picked up that book. It'd been sitting on my bedside stand there for a year, just sitting there collecting dust. I'd wipe the dust off it every now and then, set it back on there. Didn't really have any interest in reading it. I mean, for all I knew, I wasn't the one with the problem. I wasn't the one that was causing all the problem in the house. Or so I thought at the time. But anyways, I started reading this thing, and she went to treatment, and it was sometime later when she had heard about, actually it was some folks from my home group, that my future home group, that were in there talking on the family night, and they're at Alpine Recovery Center in Smoky Point. There, there's our district, our Al-Anon district. We have every 90 days we have a 9-week cycle, something like that. Anyways, they have a family night there, and we have people that go and talk there. And well, she heard about Al-Anon that night, and remember her coming home one night, she's like, there's an Al-Anon meeting right down the hall there on Friday nights. I'm like, at the time I couldn't care less. I was like, yeah, I don't remember. Some flip remark I gave to her, I think. But I got to thinking about it, and a couple weeks later, I says, I'm gonna go to Al-Anon. I'm gonna see what it's all about. And I remember, I still go to that meeting, by the way. We're still meeting there at 6 p.m. on Friday nights. But I went in there, and not knowing what to expect at all, and so like I said, I didn't hear anything about Al-Anon. I had no idea what it was. But I went in there, and somebody who's uptight when they're sober and living uptight life anyways. But I sat in there, and my daughter went with me for the first few months, and I heard that very first meeting. I heard some things that gave me hope. There was a gentleman in there who, his wife was an alcoholic too, and I heard some good things from him, and from the other people that were in there, and like I said, I heard a little hope, because my life didn't have a lot in it right at that time, and but the way I puttered around for a few months in the program, and then I got kind of serious with it. I think it was like at the end of December. Larry's my sponsor. He's been my sponsor since 2011, and asked him to be my sponsor. I says, look, I need a different perspective, because what I was doing at the time just wasn't working for me. And I remember Larry used to always have his big book in his hand. He almost always does now, but he's like, well, I've got the answer right. I got some perspective right here for you. And, and from that day on, we started meeting twice a week. And, I'm not going to say life got better, But I'm here to tell you that after going through the, the fourth, fifth steps, I think it was around this time he asked me, he says, "Why are you in Al-Anon? Why are you here?" And, I had to be honest with him, and I said, "Me, because of me." I could no longer blame my wife anymore. She was not the problem. She was maybe one of the problems in my life, but she was not the reason I'm here. My wife is not my qualifier in this program. I'm my qualifier, and I know that because of what this says right here. We read about all the things of self. I was a very selfish person. On that list of 13-page self in the book here, I even have more written in the margin because I have a lot of self issues. I mean, very selfish, very immature person, and I learned that. And I learned that my life was riddled with fear. When we were starting the fear inventories, like, yeah, we're going to do the fear inventory. I'm thinking, fear? Really? What's all that about? I was in the Marine Corps and wrestled in high school, and I thought I was a pretty good guy, right? No. Life was riddled with fear, resentment, anger. And I learned these things about myself. And I for the first time, I could stop blaming other people. I stopped blaming my parents, stopped blaming my grandparents, stopped blaming sisters. And, I didn't have anybody else to blame. I was looking in that mirror, looking right at me. And that's the guy who got me here. So, I'm very grateful for this program. I'm very grateful for the fact that, Bill Wilson wrote this book, and and his higher power led him to do this, and my higher power gave me the ability to humble myself so that I could, follow what's in here. I think that's very important. You got to humble ourselves to do this, and because I didn't want to live like that anymore. I was just so tired of, living the way we were. I mean, I was really unhappy, and my family was unhappy. Like I said, my kids had to watch me do this, watch me go through this. I put them through a lot of stuff, and a lot of it's still affecting my daughter, unfortunately. But anyways, so one of the things that I really like about the program right now, in the chapter to wives, on this page 117 here, I read this a lot because I need to. I mean, it is so easy for me to fall back into the way I was. I mean, like I said, I'm very selfish and immature, and if I'm not getting my way, I get a little antsy, and I want to get a little itchy, and I want to start being a jerk again. And I don't want to be a jerk to my family. I don't want to be a jerk to my wife. I want my kids to love me. I want my wife to be proud of her husband. And so anyways, on this page here, I'm going to read this for you guys. So if you and your spouse find a solution for the pressing problem of drink, you are, of course, going to be very happy. But all problems will not be solved at once. Seed has started to sprout in a new soil, but growth has only begun. In spite of your newfound happiness, there will be ups and downs. Many of the old problems will still be with you. This is as it should be. The faith and sincerity of both you and your spouse will be put to the test. These workouts should be regarded as part of your education, for thus you will be learning to live. You will make mistakes, but if you are in earnest, they will not drag you down. Instead, you will capitalize them. A better way of life will emerge when they are overcome. Some of the snags you will encounter are irritation, hurt feelings, and resentments. Your spouse will sometimes be unreasonable. You will want to criticize. Starting from a speck on the domestic horizon, great thunderclouds of dispute may gather. These family dissensions are very dangerous, especially to your spouse. Often you must carry the burden of avoiding them or keeping them under control. Never forget that resentment is a deadly hazard to those of us suffering from the family disease of alcoholism. Over here on the margin I wrote, the onus is on me. It's always on me. It's always my choice to step into that conflict or to be snippy or to, and I still do that, but I really try not to now. And if I do, I stop and I try not, don't ask my wife if I do this or not, but I make amends when I do, when I have to, Yeah, she's over there. Stop. And she does just stop acting like, and I go, great. Yeah. Um, and a lot of this here has made a lot more sense here since, like I said, she's 15, 16 months sober now. And it's been kind of a workout here. I mean, we were separated there for a year. But since we've been back together, I've had to use this a lot because, before when she was still drinking, there was not a lot of, even in many years into the program, there still was not a lot of happiness at home, and she was doing what she was doing, and and I was kind of alone a lot, and we didn't really communicate a lot. We didn't have conversations about the kids or future or things like that. It seemed like I was always the one making the plans and the decisions. And it's not that I wanted to exclude her. It's just simply that she wasn't able to join in those activities, And so our life was kind of, really pretty much alone. And so anyways, that led that, and that, I'll talk a little bit about this though, when we separated. I feel like I got to the point, so like I was saying, for the longest time I was just wanting to wait till our daughter got out of high school, right, and then see what happened then. But still, even when that event happened, I didn't want our marriage to end, I had been doing this long enough to know that I wasn't ready to give up on my wife. I wasn't. I still had some hope that she was gonna, that she could come around. And anyways, it wasn't happening, and like I said, I feel like I got to the point in my program where I wasn't going to bring everything, all those old things, all those old habits, all those old selfish habits to my next relationship if there was going to be one, because I didn't. Like I said, I knew that all the stuff that I brought into our relationship, from the past, and I didn't want to do that again, if I was to leave my wife and if we were to separate. But anyways, I felt like I had got to that point. Things were really starting to make sense at this point. And I could talk, to people and have conversations and things like that without getting all, standing on my soapbox, screaming, pointing my fingers, making demands, all that kind of stuff, because that's been my pattern. And anyways, I was having a conversation with my wife. I just said, look, if you don't want to stop drinking, or if you don't want to look for recovery or anything, then, I'm going to ask you to move out. And I fully understood that if she didn't want to, she didn't have to, but I told her, look, and I don't want to make any demands, but I'm going to say this: if you don't do one of those two things, I'm just going to get a separation, because there was no recrimination there. I just told her I was just tired of watching her kill herself. I couldn't do it anymore. I just couldn't do it anymore. The life we were living right then just wasn't a happily married couple. It just wasn't. And, I just didn't want to live that way anymore. But anyway, she said, she surprised me actually. She says, well, I guess I'm going to find a place to stay. A little bit of a gut punch there, but, what could I do? What could I do? She moved out. I stayed there with the dog, and, well, I tell you what, that was a tough year. That was a really tough year that we were apart. There was a scary moment where we had to get her into treatment, get her in the hospital, but there was a lot of months where I couldn't contact her. I mean, she lived in an apartment that had a lock in the front door, and she didn't answer her phone. I'd be there, couldn't get a hold of her for months, and I was scared, worried, but it was the faith in my higher power, and talking to my friends and things like that got me through. And it was last year at Fellowship of the Spirit. Was it last? Yes, last year at Fellowship of the Spirit. We had started talking that summer, and I started to see a change in her, and I seen a difference in her. And anyways, we went to Fellowship of the Spirit. I asked her, a couple weeks before. I said, "Would you like to go with me?" And she really surprised me when she said, "Yeah, I would." So we went, and that Saturday night when he did the countdown, she stood up with like 3 weeks or something like that, and we're sitting there next to her, going, "Really? Wow, wow, how great is that?" I didn't really know, and she's been sober ever since then. And yeah, it's this program. It's this program that's, working in her life and still working in mine. But I'll tell you a story about, my daughter. She's been living down in Salem for 3 or 4 years now, and her and I were so close when she was growing up. I mean, like I said, she used to come to the meetings with me for a couple of years, probably the first 4 or 5 months I was in the program, and I remember we'd go out for breakfast, her and I, or coffee or something, in the morning, and on a Saturday morning, and this was after my Friday night meeting, right? And so I'd ask her, so what do you think? Think Dad's doing okay these days? How do you think I'm doing? Am I doing okay? And sometimes she'd go, mm-mm. Sometimes she'd go, yeah, Dad, I think you're trying. Larry's quick to point out that, hey, maybe she's not the best sounding board, but you know what? I get it. But I wanted so bad to be a better person. Not only a better person, but I want to be a better husband and a better father, because I stunk at both of those things. But, we were really close for many years, and she hasn't been in our life for a while, and we're worried about her at times. And, it's like I said, I mean, she's suffering from PTSD from the stuff she had to watch, going on in her house, me screaming and acting like an idiot. And it was, I made my amends to my wife first thing, and that, back when I had the chance, and then I made my amends with my son. And, but it was my daughter. I had never, because I'd never verbally abused her or anything like that, or screamed and yelled at her. And so I didn't think that I actually needed to make amends. It never occurred to me that I needed to make amends to my daughter. It was, 3, 4 years in the program before I did. And I was really upset with myself when it occurred to me that I needed to do that, because she had to sit there and watch all the crap that was going on in her house. And it really affected her. She's seen me calling her mom names and screaming at her, seen me calling our son names and kicking him out of the house, and she didn't know what was going on. She had to live through all that. And like I said, I'm really worried. I worry about her a lot these days. I try to help her out when I can, but I still got to be a father. I still got to be, there's still got to be some grounds there. And so anyway, she calls today. We kind of been helping her out financially here and there, and trying to get her to, understand that she needs to work and have some money of her own. But anyway, she called today, and she's like, hey, I need some money, to do something. And it wasn't for anything that I thought, it was to pay one of her bills. And I called her up, and, well, actually she texted me that information, but I called her up, and I 3 words into the conversation, she hangs up on me. And I'm like, well, that sucks, I wasn't real pissed off. I was just bummed out. Vic and I are sitting outside we started talking about it. And, I gave it a few minutes, 5, 10 minutes, walking around, kicking the dirt. Trying not to get irritated and angry about this, but because she does that. She'll hear something that she doesn't want to hear, and she'll hang up the phone on me. And she learned that kind of attitude from me. She saw me do that when she was a kid. And so anyways, I called her back, and she answered the phone right away. I just told her, I says, look, I had already told Vic beforehand, I says, look, I'm going to really try to do this as good as I can, okay? I'm really going to try not, because my voice can sometimes get carried away, and I can get emotional, and hands are flying, and I get on my soapbox, and I forget that there's somebody actually there listening to me, and she just click, that's what she does. But I really tried today, because of what I learned in this program. I just had to talk to her, and I was able to get my point across to her and say things in a manner that she listened, and some things she agreed with, some things she didn't. But I don't want to be that guy anymore that's angry and pissed off all the time. And, she was supposed to call me back later on in the day, and she didn't. But, so be it. And Vic's like, yeah, you did pretty good. And I was like, phew, good, because like I said, I don't handle those kind of situations very well. But, it's this program that allows me to do that. Another thing that I do, and this isn't really alcohol related, but I've learned this in the program to just to try to be a better person. I'm a boss at work. I have a lot of kids that work for me, and every morning before I go into work, I sit out in my truck for 5-10 minutes, and I pray. I pray for my family, and I say my prayers, and then for myself, the only thing I ask for me is that I ask, show me the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. It talks about that in here too. So I don't do those things very well. I am a very impatient person. I'm very intolerant of people who I think should know or should do better, and it shows. I've been very good at letting people know that they're failing and failing miserably. But once again, I try not to do that anymore. And and these kids are starting to respond. They're just kids, and they don't need to listen to this guy, berating them, and they just don't. But I've learned that in this program that I can be a better person, and that I can do good, and I can be a source of inspiration for people. My son and I, like I said, we had a pretty rough relationship back when he was younger. I wasn't really there for him to support him, but after we made amends to him, after I made amends to him, and a few years later, he made his way back to Washington State, and he's, we have a pretty good relationship now, and he started a family. And I remember I was coming back from that same Friday meeting a few years back, and I get a phone call, and he's calling me, Dad, I'm gonna be a dad. I'm gonna be a father. He says, you're the first one I called. He didn't call his real dad. He called me, and that was really moving. I did not expect that, and but that's what this program has been able to do to my life. It's been able to put people back in my life that I thought were gone, that I thought I never had a chance with. Sticking it out, it's not easy. It hasn't been easy, but I've stuck it out, and I'm watching my wife walk the steps of recovery, and it's a pretty good thing. Okay, it is. That's probably an understatement, but that's what I feel about my life today, and it's all through the work of my sponsors. Walk me through these steps here, and I've learned a lot about myself. I learned that I could be a better person, and I know it's not Gratitude Month anymore, but I am so grateful, to have this opportunity to share this with you guys, and to have the opportunity to learn, about myself. One of the things my group is really big on is service, and Larry's always been big on service. He's always been there to offer my assistance, in the district or in the group as necessary, right? And there's been times where, and I'm not throwing him under the bus. He knows I love him for this. He's sitting on his couch, he's like, well, what do you think about this? And I'm like, no. But then I always say yes. What do you want to be? We need a DR, at the district. And I'm like, But I know it's for me. It's for the good of me. I got to get out of my comfort zone. I've always believed in getting out of my comfort zone. I mean, I've done some crazy things in my life, but this time I'm doing them. 13 years ago, I wasn't doing this right here. There's no way I can get up and stay, in front of a microphone and talk to 5 people, much less, 100 people. It wasn't going to happen. But I can do that. I can look people in the eye these days. I can I can walk a free man down this road, and it's because of this program. And it's, my higher power giving me the strength to, humble myself, to follow these steps and to try to be a better person. So, anyways, I think I heard my alarm go off. So, with that, I'll end. And I once again thank you for letting me come here and share. Thank you.